Uh, yeah, let's do it.
Let's freaking do it.
Should we be one of those shows that just starts recording and then we slowly transition into the intro? Have we already are we already in the intro? Has it already started?
I mean, technically, I've been recording for the last 4 minutes.
That's fantastic. Then let's just hop right into it. I like I actually first things first, not first things first. Whatever. The one with Wilds and Brew and Nick, whatever the heck his name is. They always start the show with just like shooting the shit while they're like getting worked on with the mics and whatever, and then they're just like, and live from New York. We're not talking about why Isaac Newton discovered the apple falling on your head. We're here to talk about football. And then they're like, Wilds thinks he was an inventor. They talk about a bunch of random shit, and then they hop into the show. Anyways, so that's what it's all about. That's what we're here for. Uh, Welcome to the what do we call it? We're calling this the GogertZone podcast.
GogertZone.
My name is Ryan Gogerty. Here with me, the beautiful Connor Calzone.
Thank you, thank you.
Wonderful food groups make up our last names, and it's kind of a pun on Red Zone. And we came up with that without ChatGPT. So I think we're off to a rip roaring start
That's a
for
very
for
rare thing for Ryan Gogerty to come up with something without ChatGPT.
So, but yeah, episode one, we're gonna go over off-season recap, some initial reactions to the rankings and initial draft trends. Obviously, not a lot of people drafting for fantasy football on July 22nd, but for those who have, they've led us in some direction, and we're gonna analyze it all, shoot the shit, talk about the major off-season trades and signings, and let's just get right into it. Connor, first off, want to say it is wonderful to see your beautiful face. We were roommates in college. Don't get to see him often. That's kind of what started this whole thing. I wanted to have an excuse to talk football and see my former roommate.
Always down to talk football, and we kind of slapped this together last minute, right? You could see by the backgrounds, not exactly professional. We're going Kelsey podcast style, two different locations, and one happens to be a messy bedroom, and the other happens to be a messy office, but we're rocking with it.
And maybe someday we'll actually meet up and do an in person podcast. That was actually
The
what had
whole
me think.
40-minute drive to meet up with each
Which
other.
was like that's like doable though. And I was thinking how much more I like the Fantasy Focus podcast when they're in person in the studio and they're sitting around chairs and they can literally just like pick on each other in person. I
Right, I
think
can
it's
just
like
put you in a headlock when I disagree with your takes.
also there's something about the cameras being zoomed out and like being in a room that makes it feel like a real show versus someone just like dialing into a Zoom call. But we're pretending like someone's actually going to listen to this
Well, yeah, I
podcast.
was gonna say you're pretending like we don't have zero views on this podcast right now. We don't have the production budget, the production value for that kind of shit.
The second we start streaming. Okay, well, anyways, let's get into the fantasy football. We'll just start with the most important off-season trades and signings. We're going to go over Justin Fields and Russell Wilson to the Steelers. Buccaneers bet on Baker Mayfield, 3 years, $100 million. Baltimore's new hammer, Derrick Henry to the Ravens. The Patriots out with Mac Jones, in with Drake May. We got Stephon Diggs adding to the arsenal for CJ Stroud. Gus Edwards to the Chargers changes both the Ravens and the Chargers backfield after the exit of Austin Eckler. We got DeAndre Swift to the Bears, the new five-headed monster. I don't know, Caleb Williams called it that or whatever. I don't really remember. But and then you got the Chiefs, got Marquise Hollywood Brown and Xavier. What's his name?
Worthy, Xavier Worthy.
Didn't have that one in my notes. But just saw his touchdown on ESPN today. They were all raving at camp about how he's the next Tyreek.
Well,
So
bro was very
uh,
fast. What I think it was 4.29 or 4.25 speed, 4.21 speed. It was some ridiculous 40 time that he has.
yeah, he's kind of ridiculous with it. So let's just get to the first one. This one was fairly early on in the offseason. I think there's a lot of interesting storylines ahead with it. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson to the Steelers. Who do you think will start?
I think it's pretty obvious that Russell Wilson starts week one. I mean, there was at one point there's like a FanDuel bet that you could make on this. Russell Wilson was like minus 1,000. I mean, Russell Wilson has been in MVP conversations within the last 3 years. I mean, he's not just going to the bench for Justin Fields, who maybe has a career as a starting quarterback, but Russell Wilson has been that guy. We kind of forget because of the lackluster 2 years in Denver, but when he was in Seattle, he was one of the best quarterbacks consistently for a decade, right? He's 35 years old. He's probably going to get the year there. Maybe Justin Fields takes it over halfway through the year if Russell Wilson doesn't perform well. But I think there's no doubt in my mind that Russell Wilson's the week 1 starter.
Okay. All right. Well, you see, I think the way the news is heading, also, I do think the sports book is a good place to look. The odds, the people speak. They seem to know more on the masses. I don't know why, but they always seem to know more. I'll take the bet on Russell Wilson to start the season, but I'd be surprised if Fields didn't end up starting at least by week 8. I wouldn't be surprised if they started in week 4 if Russell Wilson comes out like he did his first 2 seasons with the Broncos. I mean, let's not pretend like he was like he was the old Russell. Like he was booty for quite a while for the Broncos. So, but I think Justin Fields will come in around week 4, maybe 6, and if Russell Wilson can hold him off week 8, but I don't see a scenario where Russell Wilson makes it through the whole season, unless he plays particularly well. I think the Steelers have a hard schedule. They're gonna go like 9-8, like they always friggin' do. Maybe sneak their way into the playoffs and lose a wild card game, like they seem to have a habit of doing. But I think what's most importantly going to happen is they're going to win a bunch of good games against teams like the Ravens and the Browns and the Bengals. I think 2 out of those 3 teams they'll beat at least once this year, and maybe they'll start off on like a 4-2 start, and people are gonna be like, well, you can't be that bad. They're 4-2, and then you're gonna look and realize he's thrown 1 touchdown and 1 interception every game, and then they're gonna be calling for the young guy with legs. So that's my take on it all. But depending on the quarterback, who do you think will be better for the rest of the lineup, like George Pickens?
So, just one more thing about the whole quarterback situation. There's a scenario, there has to be a scenario where Russell Wilson keeps the job, and it's just the Steelers are good, right? Maybe the Steelers always find a way to eke out these wins. They're at some point 8-2 on the season just by some, wizarding by Mike Tomlin, and yeah, I mean Russell Wilson could keep the job. I think that Russell Wilson will at least keep it until they are out of playoff contention. Maybe that's week 14, week 15. They give Fields the keys, but I think that Russell Wilson's going to have his fair shot of keeping that starting position because, I mean, it's Russell Wilson. But like you said, who's going to benefit? I think the whole Steelers offense is going to benefit. Like, even if it's Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are both better than Kenny Pickett ever dreams of being.
We should establish that we do expect the Steelers to be better. That's a clear upgrade no matter who you take over Kenny Pickett. We feel bad because he's the hometown hero. He came in there, and, I think they kind of picked him like a pity pick.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't on Pitt there, but basically it was a pity pick for Pickens. Wow, ChatGPT didn't come up with that one.
Yeah, right.
And he was just incompetent. He looked like a 3rd-round quarterback is supposed to look, and he was drafted like 20-something, 30th. I don't even know what it was that year.
I think it was 30.
Yeah, feel bad for the guy, but he's got a nice home as a backup in Philly. Just a little side note to someone I went to high school with knew the wife, and now Kenny Pickett's married, so he went to the wedding. It's a whole side story, but they went to the wedding. Anyways, we got Russell Wilson getting drafted at 25th right now. Not superb, but also that comes with the expectation of maybe Justin Fields will take over eventually. You have Justin Fields just a few spots lower at 30. So
wow, so they're both being drafted as top 32 quarterbacks, though.
The experts right now that are doing their drafts have Justin Fields as a sleeper later in the rounds, going average pick 169 right now. So yeah, they do have people picking up Fields as a late flyer, hoping that that later on in the season he'll come in and save the day for your fantasy lineup, just like he did 2 seasons ago with his legs at the end of the year.
Yeah, that rushing upside is so valuable in a quarterback. And just to get to that point where you're saying on the other, the pass catchers and the other guys in the offense of the Steelers that could benefit, one guy who I think could really benefit that's kind of going under the radar is Najee Harris. I've always been a fairly big Najee Harris believer, actually. I think he's going to continue to get the workhorse back work here. And now that they actually have a pass game, hopefully, if Russell Wilson is somewhat competent, a pass game to open things up, I think that could open up running lanes for Najee Harris. The obvious ones are George Pickens. He's going to have a more competent pass catcher throwing him the ball. I mean, we've seen him make terrific catches all of last season. He's only going to get better, especially with Deontay Johnson not in the picture in Pittsburgh anymore. He's going to be a real wide receiver 1 there. So he could be a nice. I don't know exactly where he's going, but like I'm just thinking fifth round, sixth round. I would definitely take a flyer on George Pickens.
Oh yeah, no, George Pickens, I'm very optimistic about. Every Steelers fan I know seems to think he's like top three, if not the number one most talented receiver in the league. I'm like, I know he's got some amazing catches, but so did Odell. He wasn't exactly the number one receiver in fantasy every year. But anyways, it has a lot to do with your quarterback. Najee Harris, I like that take. I was big on Najee Harris last year. I thought he was undersold. I don't think anyone could have seen Jalen Warren coming out with that kind of firepower, even on such an incompetent offense, which was really what made it stand out the most. I
Right.
had Najee Harris in about every mock draft I had going into our big league last year, thinking that I was going to take him no matter what because we trade picks in that league. And I think I had 2 first round picks, if I'm not mistaken, last year. And I was taking Najee Harris like 80% of the time in every mock draft I had. I was pretty surprised I didn't end up doing it. I like that pick. My only concern is that running back who makes it and they're really only there for their rookie contract. They've shown decline over the last 2 years. I know he had a little bit of an injury issue. Is it the Eddie Lacy problem where they just kind of lose the motivation? They don't think they're going to get another big contract anyways. They're happy in their role as being maybe a third down, not even a third down, but like a goal line type back. Maybe they'll eke out an extension with some team, get traded somewhere, but honestly, they just eat too many donuts in the off season and they're just like competent. They're just happy with where they are. I hope that's not the case. I remember watching his highlights when he was 14 years old at IMG Academy and thinking, this is a grown ass man that is capable of ruining other men's lives. That like he has to be the best running back in the league. And he was for a year. He really was up there in discussion for the top three. And he's just kind of fallen off a cliff the last 2 years. I think they probably turn it around with a more competent OC and quarterback combo. Good observation there. I'm really excited for that one.
Yeah. So I think that that's kind of what we've hit on with this with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We can go on to our next topic now of the Buccaneers betting on Baker. Like you said, I like the We've really been hitting the alliteration hard so far.
Inflation
Gogs
is
is a big Baker guy, Oklahoma guy. He's been with them through the thick and thin. So I really want to hear your initial takes on the Buccaneers betting on Baker. Do you think he can be a long term answer for the Buccaneers? Can they make another playoff run with him at the helm?
well. First off, to all my friends in Cleveland, I told you so. Second off, I've been a Baker Mayfield fan since 2015. I was born and raised an Oklahoma fan. He came in as a walk on. He actually overtook, I forget the quarterback's name, which is so bad, but a true freshman for Oklahoma beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl in 2014. And then Baker Mayfield comes on as a walk on from Texas Tech, who I think started a few games, like a handful of games. And he goes up to Lincoln Riley and shakes his hand and says, "Hi, I'm Baker Mayfield. I'm going to be your starting quarterback." And I remember hearing that and thinking, like, this, who is this guy? And they named him the starter in camp. And I was like, are you kidding me? We just had a true freshman beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl. He was an absolute gunslinger for 3 years at Oklahoma. Tough, surprisingly good with his legs. I don't think he gets enough credit for that. And then he came into Cleveland and I think just got screwed out of a situation, having 4 or 5 different OCs in 4 years. OBJ just be it like I'm a Giants fan. I'm wearing the Giants t-shirt. OBJ was a total diva. I think he cried for the ball. I remember a clip of him throwing a touchdown to his tight end. Baker running up to the tight end, celebrating with him, and OBJ and Jarvis Landry are literally like whining to each other as they walk back to the sideline. You remember the clip I'm
Yeah,
talking
dude,
about?
I remember the OBJ Jarvis Landry experiment was they were such drama queens.
Was like, and Jarvis Landry was good with Baker before OBJ got there, but then OBJ got there and it took everything to shit. He did so well that one season where he won the playoff game against the Steelers, almost beat the Chiefs to go to the AFC Championship that year. Starts the next year, rematch against the Chiefs week one, nearly beats them again, and then screws up his shoulder trying to tackle somebody. Because he plays through it, he gets ousted by Cleveland for possibly the worst. Well, there's a lot of them, but possibly the worst human to step onto a football field in the 21st century, gets a guaranteed $200 million contract, and Baker's left to die in Carolina, where it seems like every quarterback goes to die nowadays. Somehow finds a way out of there, gets to the Rams. Sean McVay reunites his career with that beautiful Thursday night game against the Ravens.
That was unbelievable.
You see where I'm going with this. I'm a massive Mayfield fan. So when he came to the Bucks, I was just like, Lord, please get this man. a half decent season. So if he could just string together something, and thankfully he had Mike Evans to throw to. I think this is going to work out great. I don't see this as a Kirk Cousins deal. I think a lot of people thought that that was kind of the equivalent for what he is as a pass catcher. People need to remember Kirk Cousins was a fifth round pick and narrowly edged his way out over RG3 after RG3 suffered some major injuries. Baker Mayfield was the number one overall pick because he literally threw for 700 yards against Patrick Mahomes in college. Like this man won the Heisman. He went to the college football playoffs twice. Like he is so accurate. He doesn't get enough credit for it. He's bigger than people think. Let me get off my Baker Mayfield rant. There you go. That's what I think. I think it's an amazing idea. 100 million, 33 million a year for 3 years. I think it's going to end up being a bargain by the end of it. I don't know if the ceiling is a Super Bowl with this team, but I know that last year was a rebuilding year. Hopefully this year and the year after that, with a little bit more cap space, a little bit more draft capital, I think the Bucks have a real chance to make some deep runs in the future playoffs. Already having a playoff win under their belt, I think it's going to be great. Mike Evans was awesome last year. I don't expect that to change. If anything, maybe a tad bit of market share goes to Chris Godwin. But other than that, I think the Bucks are primed for a very similar year to last year. It'll be interesting seeing after their offensive coordinator changed, but I'm very excited to watch Baker Mayfield per usual. So that's my Baker Mayfield rant. If you have any opposition to that, please let me know. But yeah, that's kind of my guy if I'm not rooting for the Giants.
You guys should have been there sophomore year of college. Ryan had the same sling that the same injury. He's had the same injury in high school that Baker Mayfield had that year in Cleveland. He kept putting it on for people and being like, "You see, he can't throw properly with that injury." It was.
Yeah, I literally had the same exact brace they made him wear, and the whole stick was like it was his left shoulder. It's not his throwing arm. Let's cut it with the excuses. All right. Well, also he had like a broken shoulder the whole time, so let's not pretend like it didn't hurt. But that injury, and I played for a season. I was the backup quarterback in high school. I started corner, but then when I would play quarterback, I remember it like wraps up your torso, and I remember thinking like you basically have to just like twist your elbow and throw. So of course it throws off his mechanics a little bit, and he proved that. You know, he had the worst year of his career by a country mile, and everyone was saying it was his decision making. He's washed up. He was always a bust, and then he just goes and proves everyone wrong last year. The brace was hilarious. It totally got in his way, and no one. If anything, the lesson there is to do what Deshaun Watson is doing and sit the fuck out when you're injured. Like,
Yeah.
why would you ever? Like, that's the lesson that the Cleveland Browns are telling
But
you.
that's something Baker Mayfield has that dog in him, right? Like that's something that Baker Mayfield would not ever sit out. If he had a right leg amputated and they gave him like a little pogo stick or what's it called, the peg leg that a pirate has, and he would want to be out there. I mean, Baker Mayfield has a really good heart. He plays with heart. He plays with passion. And like you said, this guy's not some washed up dude. He's 29 years old. He's entering his prime. Everyone, Chris Godwin, he should be a year better from this ACL tear that he had 2 years ago. And he, at the second half of last season, was showing he's still an all pro level pass catcher. You got Mike Evans, who's an all pro level pass catcher. Rashad White really came into his own. Maybe not the most efficient running back inside the tackles, but he can make big plays, and he's really good in the passing game as well. They drafted Bucky Irving, who could be a nice change of pace back for them. Like they made a lot of additions to their offensive and defensive line. They already have a pretty good defense. This Tampa Bay Buccaneers team should be competing for at least a wild card again, but the NFC South is still not that strong. Maybe you could say the Saints would win the division, but I would still probably put my money on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the NFC South.
It does scare me because they had an amazing offensive coordinator that got poached. I think he went to the Panthers now, actually, an in-division rival. But so it's always interesting with an offensive coordinator change as a former washed-up high school football player. Not that it makes a big difference, but I know
Ex-college
that
player, sort of.
we had a 5 week stint there. But learning a playbook is tough, and it definitely takes a learning curve. It's different when you just know what the play is, you know where the receivers are going on every play. You don't have to learn new terminology or schemes. And when your second year in the system makes a big difference. So he's with the guys for a second year, new offensive coordinator. we'll see how that goes. But that's a good point with Godwin coming off of the ACL tear, another year removed from that. They always say the second year removed from the ACL. You know better than anybody. This poor man's had every knee injury in the books. It's your second year post ACL is where they say the twitch fibers really come back, and you see the explosiveness return to where it was.
Yeah. So I can't say that I'm a all pro level athlete, but 2 years after my ACL injury, I definitely feel myself getting stronger. So I have to assume that Chris Godwin, with the best physical therapist in the world on his side, is probably doing better
Yeah.
than I am.
And now for my first attempt at a segue, replacing replacing another running back who had many ACL injuries throughout his time. We got Derrick Henry going to the Ravens in place of Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. What do we think of that? I mean, we've got Derrick Henry decrease in efficiency, I think was still third in total touches last year. Even at his age, I think is he 30 now? I'm not exactly sure, but it's still a total workhorse. His efficiency dipped last year, but now he's on the Ravens. How do we think it's going to affect Lamar Jackson? How do we think it's going to impact the Ravens as a whole? Give me your take.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right. He is 30. He'll be turning 31, assuming the Baltimore Ravens make the playoffs, maybe week 18. I don't know the exact schedule. He'll be turning 31. That is fairly unprecedented territory for running back efficiency, right? I mean, running backs are not efficient into their 30s. Derrick Henry's obviously a mammoth of a human, right? I mean, what, he's probably 6'4", 240 pounds, but still, I mean, you've definitely seen a decrease in his efficiency over the last 2 years and especially last year. We might get into this later or maybe the next episode, but Derrick Henry's being drafted as running back 8 right now. And that just doesn't seem like a good place for him, in my opinion.
Mm,
He does not feel like a second or third round guy
yeah.
in my book because he's not going to be as efficient. This Ravens offense, obviously Lamar likes to run, but they're not super run heavy when it comes to their running backs. And when they do like to run it, they do like to go outside of the tackles, I've noticed, more than inside the tackles.
Yeah, maybe that'll change this year. I mean, they are definitely a run identity team.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've seen their scheme change so much in the past. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I heard Lamar
Do you
Jackson lost.
upheave your whole system for 31-year-old Derrick Henry?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. I don't know if you upheave it, but you definitely do a little HB dive a few more times than you did last year. And they're saying Lamar Jackson lost another 10 pounds. He was 225 pounds 2 years ago. He came into last camp 215. He came into this camp 205 apparently. I think he's trying to return to that form he was earlier in his career, where he was much more quick and agile and outside the box type of speed. So maybe they're just planning on letting Derrick Henry pound the rock a little bit and Lamar get back to his old form. I think it'll be really interesting to see, but I'm interested to see the Ravens receivers how they turn things around. I mean, Zay Flowers total implosion in the AFC Championship game where he had that crucial. I think he fumbled right before the goal line or something like that.
And
I
went
think he
back behind the end zone for a touchback. Yep.
yeah, and then touched like I think he made his hand all bloody punching the seat or something like that. And there was still like a whole quarter left.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, I remember it being completely crazy. I'm really excited to see it. 8 overall, I think it's going to be hard to predict, but I think the one thing we can say confidently is that Derrick Henry will score touchdowns, regardless of if he's still the yard workhorse and touch workhorse he always was. I think he'll score touchdowns this year because I think the Ravens are just going to get to the goal line that much. And when they realize they don't need to put Lamar Jackson at risk every time they're on the goal line, like why put Lamar Jackson in the same rushing scheme as Jalen Hurts when you got a Derrick Henry? So
Yeah, I mean, it's
um,
not like he has that much of a career left anyway. Just bang him up for some easy touchdowns and not put Lamar Jackson, your franchise quarterback that you're going to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to, at risk.
it'll be totally fun to watch. Hard to predict, but fun to watch. I think we came into this podcast not really sure how long we would speak about each of these topics. So I've a new idea, like to think on the fly. This might be my ADHD kind of coming out here, but I'm thinking that we do a top keepers and or rookies we're most excited about, like a one or two that we're most excited to see. That's either a keeper that you're really excited to see if they have another good year, or a rookie coming in, and then we hop into our initial reactions to the live draft trends. How do you think of that?
All right, yeah. So you don't want to go through the rest of the like kind of notable offseason stuff.
You know what? I think we could go into that for so long. That could be like a whole other like. I honestly didn't know how much we could get into it, but
Yeah,
it's
we've
what
been kind of yapping, so.
I do be yapping. I do be yapping. And but I think we could yap. We could yap for a while about a lot of things. But I really want to talk about some really exciting keepers because when you brought up Derrick Henry being 6'4", 240, absolute monster of a human, you're thinking like Cam Newton, but like train track speed. You know what I mean? Like it's just a monster of a human, and he doesn't seem to go down no matter what you do. And not to mention the mean stiff arm, of course. Anthony Richardson is listed at 6'4", 245. They think he's actually 6'5", 250. This man is as tall and large as Derrick Henry and ran a 4.45 40-yard dash last year. I am so grateful to have him in my home keeper league. I'm very excited to see how he comes. Someone traded me him last year. I'm like, I will gladly stash him for next season. We only got 12 total quarters out of him last year, but my goodness, he has potential to be the number one quarterback in fantasy. And right now, he is going as quarterback 6. He's going as quarterback 6 right now, ADP 50. That's my keeper pick of the year, besides an obvious Puka Nakua. But what do you think of that?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, there's a difference between the keeper aspect of things and the like just live redrafting of things. Two amazing keepers that I had from last year, Isaiah Pacheco and Nico Collins. Drafted them both in I think this 8th round and 11th round respectively, and they're both kind of in that 2nd to 3rd round range right now. But someone that I want to shout out is Lad McConkey. He's a rookie and I think a great dynasty keeper, even redraft. I think that he's going to contribute this year. I read a stat yesterday. Justin Herbert, with Keenan Allen leaving and Mike Williams leaving, he has 380 vacated targets from last year. 380 of his pass attempts from last year to the guys they went to no longer on the team. So there is a
Yeah.
huge hole in the Chargers wide receiving core, and
Um,
he was an absolute stud in college. I've been I've been reading all the reports of him in OTAs, and like apparently like Harbaugh loves him. Like Justin Herbert seems to have a really good connection with him already, and like who else is going to take wide receiver 1 duties from him right now? Joshua Palmer. As a Joshua Palmer fantasy owner for the last 2 years, I hate to say it, Joshua Palmer, if you're listening, I'm sorry. You suck. I mean, like you are not wide receiver 1 in the NFL material. So Lad
Josh
McConkey is
Allen
going to
listens to
get.
the podcast. I think you have the right to say that to him. Then.
But yeah, I
uh,
mean, I think that big things we could expect from Lad McConkey this year.
I'm so excited for all these rookies, like Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, like Keon Cole, but Xavier Worth. Like, there's so many rookie receivers that are going to be in the mix. Um, can't forget about my guy from the Giants, Malik Neighbors. I mean, he seems to have hands like Odell. It'll just be fun to see if Daniel Jones can actually do better than a left-handed throw to him this year. But if he can, it seems like we have a great rookie receiver on our hands as well. A lot of great picks to choose from. I'm all in on the rookie receivers after last season. I got Puka Nakua in 3 of my leagues last year. Somehow, 2 of them were keepers, and for some god awful reason, I traded him away in one of them.
Ooh.
Got some good compensation in return, but Puka Nakua just going from undrafted to I think he's wide receiver, let's see, 7 right now. Borderline first rounder,
Mm-hmm.
getting him undrafted last season. Unreal. Super excited about a lot of that. So we have so many rookies. Oh yeah, yeah.
I gotta say something real quick. I looked and saw Puka Nakua at wide receiver 7. I just have to point out Devontae Adams at 9 is that's like you got to put that on your do not draft list. Devontae Adams as wide receiver 9. Do you know how many 20-point games he had last year?
Oh, I didn't pay attention to him last year.
4. This is wide receiver 9 on the board that had 4 20-point games. Obviously, he had like that 50 piece that actually made him his like end of season rankings like okay, right? But 4 20-point games last year as someone who you're drafting as a top 10 wide receiver. And I mean, we still don't think that there's still not a good quarterback there. So what do we think is going to change? He's a year older. The offense is now has an additional pass catcher in Brock Bowers that he's going to have to split the load with. That's
Who
my
is the
like
quarterback for the Raiders right now?
could be Aiden O'Connell.
Still, okay, all
Yeah,
right.
so
Well,
that's
if
my
it's
big
early,
red bold letters do not draft list. Devontae Adams is the headliner.
do not draft episode. So Davante Adams, that's funny because maybe these experts are drafting with a chance that he ends up going to the Jets. You're a Jets fan. What do we think about those rumors? I know his agent came out and said it's not happening no matter what. Do we think there's actually any sort of chance there?
I don't think you say that with the expectation that you are going to request a trade. I mean, like, if his agent came out publicly, and I did hear that, he came out publicly and said that he's going to stay the season on the Raiders, I don't see why we wouldn't believe him. I think that no one would really bat an eye if he said he was unhappy in Las Vegas and wanted to go somewhere else for the twilight years of his career, but
Oh man, yeah, yeah. I feel bad because I was lucky enough to reap the rewards of Devonte Adams for a couple of his prime years there, and you know, I still think he has 2, 3 very, very solid years of talent in him. I don't think
mhm.
age is really the thing holding him back now. But if it takes him another year or two until he's on a good team with a good quarterback again, I mean, he's going to be 31 at that point, maybe 32. Like it sucks to see, but we'll have to see. Also interesting, Marvin Harrison Jr. ranked 10 in live draft trends for wide receivers. He's going as wide receiver 10 right now. And like we said, this is mostly the hardcore fantasy goers and experts that are doing their drafts right now. Really interesting. I think we'll have to do a whole episode on rookies. We'll have to do a whole episode on the coaching changes and how that's going to impact it. There's a lot to go over, but how about we just do a little quick recap of the first 2 rounds roughly in a 12-team PPR format that would get drafted today and our initial reactions because I don't know about you, I've heard of roughly the rankings for the first couple rounds,
Mhm.
but haven't actually gotten a really deep dive in the live draft trends so far. First overall, and I think not really surprising, CMC.
Mhm.
Uh, just absolute stud last year. I think he had more than 100 points over Brees Hall, who was RB2. Another thing that completely knocked my socks off, Brees Hall going number 2. I completely wrote him off before last season. I was like, he's coming off of an ACL. Maybe he becomes half decent towards the end of the year. But I was like, they got a crappy offensive line. He's still got, I almost, Dalvin Cook. I was like, Dalvin Cook's going to have at least some touches. Like, what the hell happened there? I just like he was great. Like, what are we doing here? How
he
did he just not?
he tore his ACL, I believe, in week 6 or week 7 of the 2020. What do you call it? 2022 or 2023 season? The one that was
Oh, that was the 22 season.
the
Yeah, that was
22
22.
season. Yeah, in the 22 season, he tore it in like week 6 or week 7, and he was ready to go week 1. And like week 1, he had an explosive run. He had, I think
I
it
know.
was a 70-yard run in week 1. That's maybe 10 months after an ACL tear. He did get stopped right before the goal line because he said, I was gassed. I don't have my conditioning ready. He got caught from behind. But still, I mean, that showed 70-yard run, the explosiveness just 10 months after an ACL tear. And he only got better and better as the season went on. And
Yeah,
especially with a competent quarterback under center.
right.
He is very used in the pass game. So for PPR, we only discuss PPR because we're real men on this podcast. But especially in PPR, Brees Hall, I don't know if 2 is the right spot for him, but I mean top 3, top 5, he's absolutely in that tier.
I mean, yeah. So they have him just a hair over Bijan right now. But it's a very wide receiver heavy round one. I remember hearing about that because running back is one of those things that just seems to die off and then be unpredictable in those middle rounds and those second, third, fourth rounders.
Mm-hmm.
So there's to be a lot of consensus that you can kind of wait and get your 2 running backs in maybe the third and fourth round, depending on what strategy you use. So a lot of wide receivers going early on. So you got CMC one, we've got CD Lamb going number 2, Tyreek Hill number 3, Brees Hall 4, Bijan 5, Jamar Chase 6, Monroe St. Brown 7, which I also just learned he played with the torn oblique all last season.
Amon Ra
That's
is a dog.
an absolute beast.
Certified GogertZone dog. Amon Ra St. Brown.
Shout out homie Ben, Lions football. Justin Jefferson 8. That seems like one of the most interesting picks that'll come up if people actually let Jefferson fall to 8, or if they take him thinking that doesn't matter, then they got JJ McCarthy, or if Sam Darnold ends up
Well,
starting.
yeah, so this is something to say. As of right now, the Vikings front office is saying that Sam Darnold is on track to be the week 1 starter.
Yeah, it's the 4th different team that's had Sam Darnold on track to start in week 1. Like I said, as a Baker Mayfield diehard, I watched the guy in college because when he was getting compared to all these people who might go number 1, this man had like 3 turnovers in their bowl game. He had like a 1-to-1 touchdown to turnover ratio his last season. I saw him single handedly blow his bowl game for like a half-ass team in college, and I was like, How is this guy gonna just show up? Now you got people like Josh Allen who have a 50% completion percentage, and just because they're big for some reason they're amazing. Like I don't understand it, but Sam Darnold I always thought was terrible. He was a little bit better than I thought he would be on the Jets. Still nothing to write home about, but he seems to be good enough to earn a starting job in August,
And then
and
lose
then,
it.
and then when they go like 2-3, and then it just he's not really doing much. So interesting to see. I think J Jeff will be good on any front, but it'll be interesting to see. See if JJ McCarthy has some actual, arm talent to him after being in a run heavy Michigan championship team. But number 9, we got AJ Brown. No problem with that.
Nope.
Saquon number 10. I am super excited to see how this rolls out. I'm devastated as a Giants fan. I would like to do unspeakable things to the general manager after watching the Hard Knocks
Oh my
clips.
gosh, dude.
Yeah, it's just absolutely horrendous all the way around. But I'm rooting for him through and through. I never once wanted Daniel Jones on our football team, and for some reason we have just milked the cash cow and handed him the gallons of milk to Daniel Jones for the last 5 years, and then he tears his ACL. It's like, oh, what is he gonna do now? It's like, oh, he'll just pass the ball. The thing he was always known for. It's like, cool. We got Daniel Jones instead of Saquon Barkley. Rooting for you, Saquon. Kill it with the Eagles. We know you will. If you have to run over us a couple times this year, it's totally fine. We'll get our quarterback next year. Whatever. Rooting for you. I think number 10 is a perfectly good spot for him. I think he's going to have an insane bounce back year. He could end up being running back 1 by the end of the season, depending on volume. But
Jalen
super pumped.
Hurts has continued to lose rushing touchdowns over the last 3 years. I believe he had 15 in 2021, 12 in 2022, and now just 10 in 2023. Obviously, Jason Kelsey, shout out to Kelsey Podcast,
Yeah.
has retired. They're probably not going to be running at the tush push as much, so 1-2 yard line, it's going to be Saquon getting that work. I don't think he's going to, rush for 1,500 yards or anything, but I definitely see a world where he rushes for 900, 1,000 yards, but gets 14, 15 rushing touchdowns and has a very productive fantasy season.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they use him in the passing game because I had DeAndre Swift last year. I was very high on him going into the year. I was very lucky that it worked out. But DeAndre Swift was not used in the passing game a whole bunch. So it'll be interesting to see if they take Saquon for what he is and get him involved as a 3 down back, like obviously he should be. But anyways, rooting for him. Number 10, no problems with that. Puka Nakua, number 11, ADP 12.5 right now. So excited to see his name. It does seem insane that just a couple years removed from a Cooper Cup MVP Super Bowl, we've got Puka Nakua, undrafted rookie. Oh, he's a 5th round rookie, but a fantasy undrafted rookie, taking a 1st round draft pick as a Rams wide receiver. Really kind of like crazy to see, but if you watch the guy play, he's just a target magnet, strong hands. They can't bring him down. Like he just seems to know how to play the game of football really freaking well. And he's right above your man Garrett Wilson to round off the 1st round. How do we feel about that, Puka versus Garrett?
I think that just the way that the Rams offense operates, that, like you said, Puka Nakua is a target hog. In a good way, not in a bad way. He's a target hog. Target magnet, it's a better word to describe it. Garrett Wilson has unbelievable talent, but the hope is that Rodgers does not have to force the ball into Garrett Wilson a lot. They also have Brees Hall. I mean, you could argue the Rams have Kyron Williams as well. I think he's going to have a bit of a regression from last season. Personally, we can get into that on a future episode, just not to take too much time here. I'm fine with Puka Nakua being 1 spot over Garrett Wilson, but I think they're definitely in the same tier. Garrett Wilson, some of the catches he made from just awful passes by Jets backup quarterbacks last year. I mean, he bailed out Trevor Siemian so many times. Or
Yeah, maybe he'll just be so rejuvenated by having an actual quarterback this season that he'll just turn everything around and just be happy and actually maybe want to stay on the Jets. We'll see.
right.
But I'm hoping for your sake that he does.
Sorry, Trevor Siemian, if you're watching the podcast.
Well, how about I rattle off the rest of the 2nd round if we were on a 12-team format, and then you just give me your initial reactions, and we'll bounce back a little bit and then wrap this thing up.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so Jonathan Taylor 13, Jahmyr Gibbs 14, Kyron Williams 15, Derrick Henry in his new home in Baltimore 16, Isaiah Pacheco 17, Devontae Adams 18 on Connor's famous do not draft list, Travis Kelce 19. That's a new low for him, I think. Travis Etienne 20, Marvin Harrison Jr., the rookie for Arizona 21, Chris Olave 22, Josh Allen 23, first quarterback expected to go in the late second round. And then rounding out the second round, Sam Laporta, tight end for Detroit at number 24. What do we think of that second round? What are your initial reactions?
Jonathan Taylor, I love the bounce back season for Jonathan Taylor. Not saying I would draft him too much higher than 13, but I think 13 is a very good value spot for Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be really, really good. Like I said, Kyron Williams, I think he's a little bit too high. I'm probably maybe end of the second round, early third round for Kyron Williams. I understand that he was fantastic last year, but I do expect a little bit of regression from Kyron Williams. And then, like I said, I think Devontae Adams and Derrick Henry are a little bit too high. Besides that, I'm pretty good with it. Josh Allen at 23. I mean, I know it's a little unprecedented to take a quarterback in round 2 of a PPR draft, but Josh Allen has proven time and time again the weapons don't really matter, right? I mean, Josh Allen is going to be QB1, barring some unprecedented injury. So, Josh Allen.
It seems like I'm playing him every other week. It's really insane how often I got stomped.
Well, when you're in 6 fantasy leagues, you do end up playing him once every other week, unfortunately.
And everyone wants him. Marvin Harrison Jr. in the second round seems insane to me, but I guess he's the second coming of Randy Moss. I don't, I should have paid attention to him more. Kyler Murray obviously knows how to get a wide receiver one the ball, but it just kind of shocks me seeing him go over people like Chris Olave and I mean, I guess there's not a lot of receivers right after him that I'm really surprised about, but I don't know.
He was amazing at Ohio State, right? I mean, like he was unbelievable at Ohio State, and I think Kyler Murray's out due for a bounce back season next year too. So
that's a good point. I think he might be a sleeper later on in the quarterback. I also wanted to make a point about Jonathan Taylor. Totally could be running back one by the end of the season. Like it's totally in the realm of possibility that Jonathan Taylor returns to running back one form, depending on obviously if CMC can stay healthy, if they use him as much as they did last year. But obviously it'll have a lot to do with if they keep Anthony Richardson in that Jalen Hurts-esque role from 2 years ago that we saw a sneak of at the beginning of last season. Jahmyr Gibbs at 14. I think that's an absolute steal. I could totally see Jahmyr Gibbs being a first-round draft pick, depending on how they use him with David Montgomery. But it really didn't matter that David Montgomery was there. I think he's just got nowhere to go but up. That Jahmyr Gibbs does. This second round is looking great. If I don't get handed one of these top 3 or 4 wide receivers in the first round, I've got to be doing one of these running backs. I mean, there are so many running backs I'm looking at where I'm just like,
you're licking your chops. I'm going to take Derrick Henry out of that, but those 4 in a row of Taylor, Gibbs, Kyron Williams, and Isaiah Pacheco, I mean, that's finger licking good.
Running back is very deep. It gets sticky once you get to the people on new teams like Joe Mixon. I'm just like, how do we rank them? You know, like, are they going to be used the same? Is the offense like did we really even consider a Houston running back to be in an RB1 or 2 conversation last year? Like, I mean, please remind me. I'm genuinely blanking. I didn't have a Houston running back on any of my teams.
Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce. I mean, Dameon Pierce had a great 2022 season. People were expecting he was like a 4th or 5th round draft pick, I believe, going into the 2023 fantasy season, but obviously he did not have a good season. Devin Singletary ended up taking the starting job from him, and no offense to Devin Singletary, but
the usage will be interesting to see. The draft strategies are going to be very different this year from last year, being such a wide receiver heavy first round. Tight end seems to be deeper than it ever was. The field seems to be much closer than we considered it at the beginning of last year when everyone just treated Kelsey like he was an absolute mile ahead. Now he seems to be falling closer to the rest of the pack. We'll have to go over some draft strategies and things like that, and just so much to talk about.
I think we've said 5 or 6 complete episodes worth of topics of things that we will say in future episodes. So definitely no shortage of content in this offseason.
That's a good thing we learned today. Also learned that I am fully capable of yapping about fantasy football. It's been a pleasure yapping with you tonight, Connor. I can't wait to get to the rest of this, the rest of these rookies, the rest of these offseason moves. We got a lot to go over before even the preseason gets going, and I really look forward to it. I gotta say, happy episode 1.
Yeah.
On the GogertZone podcast. I gotta keep reminding myself what the freaking name is.
Oh, wait, I got it. I got his with the.
Oh, you got the. Can I do is the thumbs up gonna work?
All right. Technology, bro. Technology's crazy.
Thank you for tuning in. If anyone does tune in to this first episode, that'll be freaking hilarious. Let's just make some kind of deal. first 10 people to watch any of our videos get some sort of prize when we inevitably reach our first, like,
Somewhat big
however,
milestone, 100,000, something like
milestone.
that.
If for some reason you watch this god awful episode 1, you will be rewarded down the road if we hit a certain subscriber
Think
milestone.
about this as just expected value. The expected value of watching this podcast is positive, right? Maybe you had to
Nah.
turn it on for 45 minutes while you had a boring ass workday, but you get a prize at the end. We're bribing you.
So yeah, so
Watch the
thank you for
episode.
tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one on the Gogert Zone.
The GogertZone.